Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. We are here today from One Data for reusable data products, shortening time to value through collaboration. So let's get started. Again, today's presentation is brought to you from One Data and Intelligent Business Strategies. Today we're going to be talking about reusable data products and shortening time to value through collaboration. My name is Neda Tallier. I'm the Director of Product Marketing and Content at One Data. And I've got a history of working within the data and analytics space over the last 13 years, since at Tableau, Heap, numerous companies, as well as leading my own data and analytics teams and initiatives. I'm joined today by Mike Ferguson, founder and CEO of Intelligent Business Strategies, who has independent IT analyst and consultant experience. He's been specializing in data management and analytics with over 40 years of IT experience. He's consulted dozens of companies on BI analytics, data strategy, technology selection, modern data architecture, data mesh, data governance. The list goes on. Mike is also the founder and chairman of Big Data London, so many of you may have been to the conference, attended, and probably seen them there live. He's formerly the co-founder of Code and Data with world-renowned author Chris State and Turing Award winner Dr. Edward F. Code, who invented the relational model that caused the birth of the relational database you all know as SQL. He's former chief architect at Teradata on the Teradata DBMS database. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Neda. Pleasure to be here.
All right, so just quickly a little bit about One Data. Our mission is to enable data experts to build data products that business users need. Our vision is really that IT data and business teams can actually come together, collaborate, driven by data and supported by AI, with the goal of exploring more of your organization's data through the development and design of data products that are actually driving your business outcomes. So, before we actually get into the content, we wanted to launch a poll to get an understanding of actually how many of you are already working on implementations of data mesh or data products. So we're going to go ahead and launch a poll.
Okay, so it's pretty well looking at 35% or thereabouts are testing the water. 28% are not yet, but they have plans to do so, and 22% navigating through it, and 17 already experts, according to the survey. So if you add up those that are testing the water and beyond, the vast majority are heading down that road, which is good news. I kind of was expecting it to be a little bit. People still waiting to get started, but it looks like we've got a fair number of the folks on the webinar already underway.
All right, well, and I guess there's a lot for them to learn, Mike. So I'll go ahead and actually transition it over to you, and we'll get into the topics for today.
So I want to talk to you about really the need for a high quality data foundation as companies really begin to look at data and AI as a strategically important thing. Then they're going to want to look at that, and then they want to look at, how exactly have we been engineering data to date, and what kind of problems have resulted from that. And then from there, I'll like to introduce data products and what those are, and then look at how you can organize to coordinate the development of data products across multiple business domains in order to get maximum value and productivity out of folks around the enterprise in helping to produce data products. We'll also look at a best practice methodology as a guide, if you like, to building data products, and then the publishing those data products somewhere where you can easily share them and consume them, and then make use of them for different analytical workloads. Okay, so I think for most organizations today, executives' expectations are pretty huge when it comes to data and AI. Already seeing that many executives reporting measurable return on investment. But truly maximum return on investment is not going to happen unless there's a kind of solid foundation of high quality and governed reusable data. Because if people really want to get the maximum value out of AI to automate things, to give them the speed and agility that they want, and transform their business, disrupt the markets that they're currently in to gain competitive advantage, then we really do need this high quality data foundation. Now, the problem for most of my clients, at least, is historically that's not where they're at. Where they're at is that they've built a number of, let's say, analytical silos. That is different kinds of silo for different analytical workloads. Typically, for example, a data warehouse, although several of my clients have got multiple data warehouses across their organization. You could have a data lake or a lake house for data science activity being done there, or you could also have a graph database for specific kind of niche analytical workloads like fraud or cybercrime. You may also have streaming analytics going on live data, whether that's streaming, clickstream coming in off of your website, or could be IoT data, for example, in a manufacturing organization or something like that. But typically in all of these different silos, there's data engineering going on. People using various tools from within that silo to connect to source data, capture that data, clean it, integrate it, transform it, make it available for a specific analytical workload. The problem here is, however, that often different data integration tools are being used in different silos. And because there's no standard to share metadata, it's highly unlikely that whatever people are doing in one silo is visible to those in another, because they won't have access to the tools. If they've got a different set of tools, they're going to be no access to the tools being used by other users in other silos. And because of the lack of standard, they're just totally unaware if the data that they want to see integrated is maybe already integrated somewhere else. And so what we've been doing historically is more like what I would call point-to-point data integration. That is, getting data from a range of different data sources, building pipelines for a specific single purpose, whether that's for a specific machine learning model, or whether it's for a graph database, or for a data warehouse. And so it's kind of point to point, if you like, data integration. And very frequently, the same data sources are often used in multiple cases. Particularly for things like master data, whether that's customers or suppliers or products or that kind of thing. So you often find that the same data is transformed again and again, typically inconsistently because people do it differently in different pipelines, and so the amount of reinvention going on is considerable. Plus the fact that you're getting inconsistent data engineering happening just because people are doing that differently in different silos. Now, historically, that's been done by, say, centralized IT professionals in the main. But as the number of data sources continues to increase and the number of users want access to those new data sources to analyze it, what's happened in most of my clients, at least, is that IT is just being outpaced by business demand. And so they've become a bottleneck. And so there's a kind of desire to get more people around the enterprise involved in engineering data to be able to move at the pace of business and be able to produce the insights that they want to produce. But also historically over the last decade, we've seen a frenzy of activity, whether it's in self-service business intelligence with a broad range of different tools. Many of my clients have got multiple BI tools across their enterprise, which are being used to access multiple different data warehouses and data marts, and sort of kind of standalone self-service development of BI reports and dashboards and whatnot. Similarly, on the right-hand side, data science has also been a bit of a frenzy. Kind of the last decade has seen technologies arrive and tools arrive and new algorithms arrive, and so we've been leapfrogging, from one technology to the next. And so again, it's not unusual to find a number of disparate technologies being used in a standalone fashion around the enterprise to produce things like machine learning models for use in different parts of the business. So I suppose what you could say here is it's been very fractured. And every one of these kinds of standalone projects has had some kind of data engineering requirement in order to get the data for machine learning models or get the data for BI reports and whatnot. And so self-service data prep has come from a kind of chaotic background where we handed out self-service data prep tools to everybody and said, you figure it out. And what we kind of got was the Wild West. And a lot of my clients one of my clients came up with this quote, which was, everyone's blindly integrating data with no attempt to share what they create. Again, bearing in mind many BI tools had self-service data prep baked in. And again, remember, there's no industry standard to share metadata across tools. And so again, people unaware of what others have invented or created in other tools. So I suppose in a way that's created even more silos. And then you could kind of say, well, how many times now is the same data being integrated again and again for individual use cases? And isn't that just going to cause even more inconsistency, people not agreeing on results and whatnot, having different versions of all of this, and so confidence in what's being presented is deteriorates, and we get a lot of disagreements on these kind of things. So I guess what you could say is data engineering, at least in a lot of my clients over the last decade, has been more like the picture on the left, where you're looking for data, and if you can't find it, you just build your own. So there could be other books in that pile which are the same as the ones on top, but you just can't find them, so you build another one. Whereas people really would like the picture on the right. They want data to be ready-made. They want it available, easily organizable, easy findable. So they don't have to continue to reinvent and rebuild this kind of data again and again. So this brings us to the world of data products. And so the idea behind data products is that we create reusable data sets. Now I'm going to make a distinction between what I call data products and what I call analytical products, because there's so much confusion out there about what data products are. For me, data products are reusable data sets around particular data entities in the enterprise. They could be physical data sets, or they could be virtual views where the data looks like it's integrated, but it's physically not. But nevertheless, when you access it, you get that integrated set of data representing that data entity. Or you could also have a pipeline that produces that data product and then invoke it on demand to be able to produce the data product that you want. And that's versus analytical products, which are things like BI reports and machine learning models and AI bots and whatnot, that are really produced using data from data products. And so if you would accept that as a definition, what we're trying to do here is to get multiple teams to build data products around the enterprise. But given that there's no standard to share metadata across disparate tools like we saw already, looking to have a common platform to be able to do that on and connect to a broad range of disparate sources across multiple clouds, on premises, the edge, and SaaS applications. Kind of have a catalog to know what's out there and to understand the quality of the source data, and then be able to produce the data products that can be shared. But obviously, in order to coordinate all of these different teams and not just have a bunch of standalone projects, we need some kind of program office, some kind of federated operating model where this is coordinated perhaps under the office of the CDO or CIO, where we can create a kind of center of enablement and push expertise into these teams and coordinate overall development, which kind of really is important, I think, if you're trying to get multiple teams around the enterprise to start engineering data. We need some kind of program office, some kind of base camp that kind of coordinates things and kind of knows, well, here's who's building what and for what purpose, a kind of the understanding, the kind of master plan of how everything should ultimately come together. And I think it's a pretty important capability if you're trying to get multiple teams around the enterprise engineering and producing data products. And so we kind of need like a monster Kanban chart, to be able to see, well, what's been built to date, what's still got to be built, so that everybody kind of knows who's building what and for what purpose. And so if you're trying to reduce fraud, for example, well, then which data products are being built by who in order to reduce fraud? Similarly, which machine learning models are going to get built to reduce fraud, etc. So we need some kind of coordinated activity to be able to align the development of data products with strategic business objectives and business outcomes. And then using a common platform, kind of not build data products or data for a single purpose as we saw before, but this time build these reusable data products once so we can reuse them anywhere in different analytical workloads. And as architecture modernized, as we saw with a bit of animation there on the screen, and we start to bring down the silos, we still get the ability to reuse these data products across multiple analytical use cases. Now, what we've seen over the last decade, sorry, I beg your pardon, the last couple of years, has been a kind of flurry of activity as different vendors look to say, this is the architecture for building data products. And there's a whole broad range of these out there at the moment, whether you're doing this on a sort of single data lake with a single storage account and your data lake's being zoned, or whether you're doing this on multiple storage accounts for different teams on a single data lake, or whether you're doing it on multiple storage accounts on multiple clouds with different data lakes, or multiple or a single lake house or multiple lake houses. I've seen all of that. Seen even people saying do it on data warehousing staging tables, or do it on data virtualization, or do it on Kafka topics. All of these are out there competing for sort of the architecture to use to support decentralized development of data products. But more recently, I think what we have seen is a very interesting capability, which is the emergence of open table formats, things like Apache Iceberg, Apache Hoodie, or Delta Lake, and then putting data products on open table formats, which are different from proprietary table formats. An individual database has its own proprietary table formats, but more recently we've seen a lot of data warehouse vendors support open table formats as well. The beauty of that, of course, is that that's on top of data in storage, like cloud storage. But I can have those open tables across multiple clouds, and not only that, I can have multiple engines update those tables. I can stream data in and do streaming analytics on those open tables. I can also do data science on the same open tables, and then data warehouses can use those open tables. So in a way, and I can have those open tables across multiple clouds and treat it and access it from a data warehouse. And so if you were able to create data products on open tables, it could potentially allow you to satisfy multiple workloads. And so, this is definitely a federated architecture that is emerging in the last year or so. But what's clear about data products is there's different levels in a way, and I like to use the term foundational data products. I mean, these are core data entities in your business. Every business has them: customers, orders, products, shipments, payments, suppliers. We've got all of these within our enterprise. They're foundational, and you can build other data products on top of them, but you definitely need those foundational ones. And so even a crude mechanism like this, making a list of master data entities and transaction type data entities within your enterprise, is a great way of um, getting a quick start mechanism to say, well, what kind of data products would exist as foundational data products within our enterprise. But you need some kind of methodology. This is a guideline, if you like, of how to do this. To create a data product, you need common definitions to describe the data product. You need a schema. You need to discover where's the data needed to create the data product. Can you map the source data that you find to the common definitions describing the data product? Can we do data quality profiling on the source data to understand if it's in good shape, bad shape, and if necessary, clean it up and integrate it and make that data product available, and then monitor and govern it to make sure that everything's being used in a compliant and consistent way. Now, the beauty of that methodology is it's repeatable. I can do it again and again for each individual data product. But then how do you get this going? Well, one of the key foundations of the first step of the methodology is this common vocabulary, getting common data names to describe the data products that are needed, so that everybody's clear as to what this data is and what it means. One way to do this, which I'm seeing quite widely used, is the creation of a data concept model. As this is not a detailed logical data model, just a data concept model, as a way to get started with data products. But this is something that businesses are quite happy to participate in understanding the core data within their enterprise. But then you can take that data concept model, and for each data concept within it, start to define a data product within your business glossary of your catalog, so that we can get the skeleton, if you like, the different data products initially defined in there, and then we can bring in subject matter experts who understand that kind of data to kind of complete the set of attributes and common data names that describe those data products, whether that's customers or orders or whatever it may be. But defining it within the business glossary of a data catalog. Then having got that, we need to then create a schema for that. And there's a lot of discussion as to, should this be a normalized schema? Should it be a familiar schema for use in analytics like Kimball based design approach or data vault design approach? What should it be? And there's strengths and weaknesses to a number of these design techniques, and I've got a table here that kind of shows you that. But things like master data entities or master data products, customers, suppliers, materials, products, those tend to be often normalized if you're going to store those in an MDM system and share them across analytical and operational transaction systems. But equally, there are analytical data modeling techniques, which would mean if the data products were created using those techniques, they would be kind of ready for the world of analytics. And there's strengths and weaknesses to each of these, which I haven't time to get into now. But assuming we get the schema of the data products sorted, we then have to discover, well, where is the source data out there to produce the data product? And then can we use the power of a catalog to discover that data and map it to our business glossary, so that we don't just know about the physical names of the source data out there, but we also have it mapped to the definitions for our data product within the business glossary. And having got to that, we now know where the source data is for the data product that we want to build. And we can even do data quality profiling to understand the quality of the data within those sources. And then for every one of those data products defined in our business glossary, we can then create the pipelines to produce those data products, publish them and make them available in a data marketplace. Now, if you've got multiple teams building these pipelines, you really want to fuel collaborative development. so that people don't unnecessarily reinvent stuff. And so that's why a common platform is really useful and will help boost productivity and allow people to start reusing things. And so then you can get to pipeline components that you can reuse, whether those are connectors or standard components to ingest files or to connect to data streams or to mask data for data governance purposes if it's sensitive personal data, for example. And we can build up a library of reusable components that different teams can just pick up and use rather than have to figure out and reinvent themselves again and again over time. And then once we got those products developed, we can publish them in a data marketplace, of course, and make them available for others to consume and use. And so in a way, the data marketplace becomes not only a shop window for data products, but it's also a governance mechanism to share. But the purpose here is quite obvious. It's building ready-made so that you provide people with ready-made reusable data. Now, this is similar to the kind of canteen analogy that you see on the screen here, but in the world of self-service in the past, 10 years ago when we handed out self-service data prep tools, what we did was just give everybody tools and say, you figure it out. And we pushed complexity on to consumers and said, you deal with it. That's like walking into a canteen and saying you want to have chicken for lunch and somebody hands you raw chicken and vegetables and goes, you figure it out. You don't expect that in the canteen. You want ready made. You want to be able to find what you need, pick it up, and consume it. Need a little bit of metadata around it because clearly, you don't want to eat this if it's 30 days old. But the point being is that, we need to be able to have metadata to explain what this is, how it was built, when it was built, how fresh it is, what's the lineage around it and whatnot to be able to understand it, but then pick it up and use. And so we want objectives to be able to produce trusted, compliant, secure data products that are available for consumption. We want to be able to safely and securely use those and have the confidence to use it. We need business terms to understand how the data was created and lineage and whatnot. And we need a data contract or a sharing agreement that consumers will accept and agree to the terms and conditions of sharing so that we can monitor and audit and trace and govern all of that data sharing around the enterprise and make sure that we're not sharing sensitive data, if it's not correctly protected. And certainly we need to be aware of things like cross-border data sharing and whatnot. But the idea is that we publish into a data marketplace. And I think over time we'll see more than data products in here. Already we're seeing machine learning models in some cases and AI bots. And I think we're going to see even more go in there in the future. But the idea is that we formalize the publishing of data products, that we make sure all of these things are kind of in place, before the data product becomes available so that we know that we're governing this correctly. And in addition, once we have that, people can then take those data products and then go and drive value with it, be able to quickly produce BI reports or machine learning models or recommendation services and whatnot, and even publish those back into the marketplace for others to consume and use. So ultimately then what we get is reusable data products, which are available possibly in open table formats to use and reuse in multiple workloads. Here you can see I can pick whatever ones I want and create a data mart, or I can make them available to data science. But the key point is they're all using the same ready-made reusable data products rather than having to go back to zero and reinvent everything from scratch. And we can obviously start to monitor those data products, understand who's using what, the most frequently used data, etc., and be able to ultimately learn from that and start to recommend data to people around the enterprise to speed it up even further. And then if we need to make use of data and analytical products around the enterprise, then the marketplace becomes a focal point, saying, well, what have we already built? well, what's already available to us so we don't have to reinvent it? And can we use that in our operations or in middle management or even at a strategic level or some combination of these things to be able to move the needle on a particular outcome, to reduce fraud or improve customer engagement or whatever that is, to be able to make a difference in terms of our overall business objectives. So for me, I think in the future, as we go along and build this, we're going to see data products really and data marketplace move to the center of the enterprise and become the place where consumers go to find ready-made that they can then integrate into their processes and applications to really get proliferation to become a data-driven and AI-driven business. So that kind of leaves me therefore ultimately the data and AI is moving to the middle of the enterprise, and it's the marketplace that's really going to become the center piece to be able to allow us to weave this into our applications and processes over time. So to wrap up then, I would say, data products are there, they stop people reinventing, therefore reducing the costs of data engineering. It also reduces the number of copies of data being created for different analytical purposes and ultimately shortens time to value because we don't have to reinvent, we just reuse. We get high quality reusable data products for multiple analytical workloads rather than, again, everyone doing their own thing in their own silo. And as you build more and more of these, then 60, 70, 80% of what you need becomes ready-made. And so you get progressively faster and faster at delivering value. And of course, you can govern the sharing of that data around the enterprise and make that marketplace the starting point for consumers rather than making raw data the starting point that we did 10 years ago. So I hope that's given you an idea of what you can do with data products. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Nada and go from there.
Thanks so much, Mike. Um, that's a lot of content, obviously a lot of ideas and examples built throughout the presentation. Um, there's a lot of questions that I'm sure everybody in the audience has, so please feel free to drop those into the Q&A section as we go through the next portion of today's presentation. We're actually going to launch a poll because while Mike talked about a lot of what needs to be done and how you can take a look at it and some of the methodologies that you can start with, the question that we really have is, what are the roadblocks to making progress towards data product and democratizing data engineering today for your organization? So we'll also go ahead and launch a quick poll.
Number one issue, organizational. Number two issue, data complexity. Wow, there you go.
Okay. Well, let's wrap up the poll then, and I'm going to just talk through a little bit about One Data and actually how we try to help solve this problem of a combination of organizational, people, and as well as process. So as Mike shared, some of the key things that we really look at is how do we enable more people within the organization to build, manage, and share data products. And it's not just to do this, it's to do it faster, more efficiently with repeatable process, but around some core capabilities. So part of that is connecting to your main data sources and your main data infrastructure to really pull in the metadata to actually get a more visual landscape. Many of you have data catalogs that you've implemented over the last years, are probably still implementing data catalogs. But the reality is it's very difficult for people to, look at a long list of stuff and understand how does that really play together. And so one of the core capabilities with the One Data platform is really the ability to connect, see connections within the data, but visually see those things. And so that's one of the pieces that we focus on quite a bit. We really try to understand what are the challenges that data teams are facing? What about business users? How could they use this? And what would be beneficial for IT for tracking and tracing of data source to asset, for example, to data product? Another part of that is going through this preparation stage. So how do we actually clean, prepare, profile data to make sure that people can understand what is available and how to work with it? Of course, data quality comes in here to play. So really looking at what kind of quality checks can you run across not only your assets, but your data products to ensure governance at scale. And then, of course, deployment, deploying these data products after development into a centralized data marketplace to make them findable, searchable, accessible, governable. And with that, of course, being able to integrate those data products and push them into third-party sources, whether that's tools like your front-end BI, Tableaus, Power BIs, whether they're into your AI and ML project databases like Databricks, and really any other storage, for example, like a Snowflake data warehouse. So you can really bring the data together. There is a set of core capabilities built in. And with that, we've actually been focusing quite a bit of our time on really thinking about how do we enable not only the data experts, not only IT, but really business users at every stage of this data product lifecycle, and using actually AI to accelerate timely processes and really gain insights. So of course, we've got to, get that data extracted and ingested into the landscape. This is where we're going to be able to start to understand lineage. We have capabilities around exploration on the map, really pulling together different data products or data assets to show relativity, to show connection. Within this, you can actually do quite a bit. You can access, discover, obviously examine your data down to a table level. And obviously go through that data product marketplace to find data products that are readily available and accessible, whether it's for your specific project, domain, or something that you're looking at sharing with external partners. Part of the request process, right? So how do we request data, new data products? And what does that design process look like? Well, today we have an excellent AI-driven data product request form that is actually completed within our product. And so this is really the business user who's, providing the information, the context, the information that is going to be critical for actually developing the data product. And coming soon, there will be a business case builder for that prototyping experience to really actually build the data products before you get it to that really in motion and spending a lot of time. You have tools to quickly examine, again, explore, build, and actually provide something for conversation with a business person so that you guys can ensure that you're, working towards the same goal. With that, we've got tools built in to actually support you in building your data products. So whether it's using SQL, whether it's chatting with an AI bot, these things are readily available within our product today and are actually helping to accelerate the development process, supporting very difficult, challenging problems, but really finding ways to move past some of the barriers and time committed to building data products and supporting that speed there. In terms of managing data products, obviously we're thinking about it from 0 to 100. What does it mean from the initial request down through the development and retirement of your data product, and ensuring that there's relevant information for both a data person, IT, as well as the business people to ensure that they understand what's happening. We've got alerts and notifications built in, of course, quality assurance measurements. And from there, we're really thinking about how do we enable sharing of the data, whether that's within the data product marketplace, whether you have your own marketplace that you've already built, and actually enabling you to do what you do best, design a system for your organization while providing it and a repeatable process with our platform. And of course, the question always is, where do you guys sit? How do you fit in? I have 2 points to this, right? So we know that the complexity of the data landscape is continuing to grow. Today, we can fit into pretty much any stack, which is, a good problem to have, but at the same time, we're kind of at a tipping point where we need to examine what are the tools that we really need? How do we really enable businesses and our business partners? And so this becomes an active conversation between us and your team, really supporting you and finding the right place, supporting you on implementation and piloting of data products to ensure that you're really able to get to that business value. And last but not least, we have an excellent team set up with a services package to tailor that we can do based on your needs. So if you're working through your path of what are data products and how can they be beneficial, we have some Marco Polo workshops that is very much about exploration. We have proof of values that you can do if you've got some projects that you're interested in and continuing to develop. Our team of solutions and services team is excellent in this case. And of course, if you've got questions or needs around partnerships, we have some great partners who are supporting us in the concept of data product governance and how that fits into your existing data governance strategy. And so based on what your needs are, we've definitely got the right package and support on our side. If you're interested in, of course, learning more about One Data and how we work and actually seeing the product in action, we have a live demo coming up next week. And so with that, I will go ahead and transition over to Q&A. So for those of you in the audience who have questions, please go ahead and drop them in, and we will actually start tackling some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. We are going to go fully on to live camera. Okay, so Mike, I'm going to actually kick us off with a question that came up because you touched on the concept of benefits of foundational data products and obviously repurposing. What do you see as some of the benefits today in moving towards data products, and especially for these companies who are out there interested in supporting their generative AI or machine learning models to accelerate and develop their companies?
I think I think one of the advantages is greater business understanding of what the data within the enterprise is. I mean, breaking it down and just saying, well, we have all of this data is not very precise. When you get into data products, start talking about customers, start talking about suppliers, orders, shipments, returns, claims if it's you're an insurance business, foreign exchange trades if you're an investment bank, whatever it is. It's far more precise. It allows you to start talking the language of business anyway, and therefore breaking down those kind of walls, if you like, between IT and business. I think it also means that business data engineering teams can latch on to what exactly they're trying to do with data engineering. They can say, okay, this is what we need to build this data product. We can then say, I think as well, aligning it with business strategy to kind of say, well, okay, one of the objectives is we really need to reduce fraud, or we really need to improve customer engagement. If that's an objective, then it's a case of, well, which data products are you going to build to help you reduce fraud? And then you can get precise about it, and then you're already aligning the whole development initiative with strategic objectives and high priority business outcomes, which is super important for sponsorship, because if you get an executive kind of wanting to know, well, what are you guys doing to help us reduce fraud that they're accountable for? Most executives are accountable for strategic objectives and improving business outcomes. Then what you're doing is effectively being much more precise about exactly what data you're using and producing for that particular goal, rather than saying, well, we're just building this data store. That doesn't mean much. But if you say, well, we're producing the data product data, and we've got these fraudulent transactions in a data product, that we're going to use to train a model and whatnot, then I think people can understand, at the business level, at executive level, precisely the things that you're building, the building blocks that you're putting in place in order to be able to deliver on that objective. So I think it's all kinds of benefits. And the reason I mentioned the data concept model is I've sat down several times with clients in business areas and just talked to them about using their data, and start to whiteboard a data concept model in front of their eyes. And they immediately latch on. They go, yeah, well, then they bring out a few other things as we start to see this unfolding in front of their eyes. And before you know it, they're right in it. They're right involved in it. And when you then say, okay, turn every one of these into a data product, they then get it. They get what you're trying to do. And I think a lot of the times, trying to get business buy-in is about getting people to understand why you're doing this. And I think if you can associate this with a strategic business objectives, which are high priority anyway, and have executives that are accountable for it, and then show what you're building and for what business purpose, it really resonates. and it breaks the problem down rather than talking about, oh, let's build a data lake. Well, I mean, that could have everything in it, right? Or let's build, it's just too broad. But when you start talking about building data products, it becomes far more precise and, in my opinion, far more effective.
Yep. So we actually, this ties into a question which we can kind of expand on here that came in. So how would you get started, whether it's an MPV, proof of value, to convince CXOs this is the way? And so,
Well,
Mike, I'm
I
gonna,
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, I was just, go ahead. Yeah. Throw it to you and then
Yeah,
I'll come
I
back
was
around
just
on it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you got to start with business outcomes and strategic business objectives. I mean, any data strategy and analytical strategy, for that matter, has got to plug into that. I mean, it's got to align with that. And so for that reason, I've got to go there. And if you haven't got sight of what your business strategy is and your strategic objectives and priorities, then dig until you find it. You know, talk to the right people until you find it. It should exist within your organization because there are typically other executives, as I said, who are accountable for making sure that the company achieves those goals. And once you've got that and clearly understand it, then you can say, okay, what is it that we can build, and what have we built already? What is it that we can build in order to deliver on those goals? And then you can get um, clear understanding why you're doing it from the get-go. And if there are a number of data products that need to be built, then you can divide and conquer. You can say, okay, you guys are building this one, you guys are building this one. You can then get a coordinated development towards a common objective. And I think that builds community, it builds collaboration, and keeps people focused on why they're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, from the one data side, things that we've seen and also experienced is, identifying exactly the business problems that are out there, to really looking at what are the current challenges that you're facing and why are you facing those challenges. And I think you hit on it when you said, we're a lot of organizations were developing point solutions at the end of the day, point data analytic assets to solve one specific question, which today, when you really look at it, it's unmanageable. It becomes very unmanageable for teams. And that's why we have multiple different answers. People don't trust the data. And so culturally, you're fighting, backwards. But at the same time, you have an opportunity to actually say, hey, we're going to start with one or two core projects. We're going to actually develop some KPIs. We're going to monitor the duration. How long does it actually take us to get to this? Can we repurpose this data product and continue to use it towards not only this use case that we're aiming for, but could it help us, better manage X, Y, and Z? And then if you really have your specific KPIs, what you would need to move in the business, you've got your data and you say, okay, I need to increase or decrease by X%. That's what we're aiming for. You have your goals now set. So when you
Yeah,
have that from a
I think as well, there's also other benefits. I mean, if you look at the amount of money that we're burning reinventing, but again and again all over the business, everybody engineering data, it's staggeringly expensive to work like
exactly,
that, and so there's an obvious cost reduction in data engineering that'll come out of data products because you're not only that, but you're also going to progressively speed up or progressively shorten the time to value even more. As I said, more and more of these things get created, more and more is reusable, therefore there's less to invent, and therefore you get faster and faster at delivering value. And
yep,
so despite the complexity around you that we saw as a roadblock, um, and also the organizational issue, I think if you can show that you're going to get progressively faster at delivering value despite the data complexity, people are going to buy into that. And I think that plus the cost savings that come from stopping people continually reinventing and breeding inconsistently, albeit inadvertently, is really important. So for me, it's a win-win all round.
So you talked on, I mean, obviously we see culture is one of the main problems. And so this kind of also ties into culture. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the tips that you have for people who need to combat this idea of culture and cultural change that needs to take place?
I think there's a couple of things you can do here. I mean, I think what I have learned is that IT people need to become business savvy far more rapidly than they currently are, um, and therefore understanding, you know, how you can potentially deliver on a business outcome is important, and understanding the problems that are preventing companies achieving those outcomes, as you mentioned, I think is very important. So I guess understanding why um, companies need to do this is is all very important. But culturally, also, as I said, I think historically we've done lots of standalone projects in the past, with standalone self-service BI, standalones, data science projects all over the place, and it's caused a bit of a Wild West situation. But I think the idea of the program office and the federated operating model, aligning that with business objectives is really going to get buy-in, because it fuels a community. It fuels the idea of sharing. It aligns multiple teams up on common objectives. And so I think doing that. The other thing I would say that I've seen become effective is start to gamify the whole thing. Kind of putting points on the board, like, if you've produced a data product that contributes to a movement in a needle, in an outcome, and you're getting rewarded for that, getting this kind of gamification going on around the enterprise, then you get teams almost competing to move the needle, and then the momentum starts to destroy the old barriers of resistance, and those kind of things I think work pretty well.
You said it yourself, so I'll say it for myself, which is you said IT people need to become more business savvy. And from my perspective, sitting primarily on the business side, working with data teams, I would say business people need to take more ownership in the processes that they design that result in the data, and have some more stake in the game and really be taking place and and have some responsibility there. I think this is also one of the cultural challenges that a lot of companies face, and definitely that we hear is business isn't interested in doing these things. They just want the data. But at the end of the day, the thing that does make the biggest change, and I've seen this in my days at Tableau, at Heap, at pretty much every company, and definitely here, is when you do have business, you know, it's not only bought in, but it's participating in the conference. And when you have IT participating in the conversation, and when you have data, this is where the magic happens. And so part of it is finding those stakeholders who are willing to invest the time and the resources to actually have the conversations to get to the results. Now, this is where culture comes together. And when you have one win, that starts to spread into a second and third. And so when we talk about, proof of values or MVPs, it's finding those people who are really, invested in making the changes happen and getting the results. And I think that's one of the other things that I say, definitely coming from the business side. Sometimes it takes, some pulling, but when you have the right driver on these projects, you can really get to great results. But Mike, I just wanted to say thank you so much for contributing to the content, for being here with us, for sharing your expertise and experience.